We are back, and Black Duck is also back. Google is using YouTube to steal your files. And have we reached the AI singularity?
All that to be discussed and more. He's Mike. I'm Steve. Welcome to Wired In.
Yes, we're live on this beautiful Friday here in Toronto. We're going to be talking 10 articles, 10 breakdowns, some normal, some of the crazier stuff. We'll get into it.
Yeah, and as usual, all of the articles are described below in the show notes. If you're watching this now or in the future on YouTube, hit the bell to be notified when we go live because it's a little bit erratic sometimes. Whenever we find cool stuff, we just go.
So let's go. Let's do it. First article up on the docket. Black Duck is back.
Yeah, I'm going to grab this one because I kind of technically worked there for a while when it was Synopsys, the software integrity group. And Synopsys, like a little quick history here, Synopsys started, they're what we call a electronic design automation company. They weren't really security originally. They would make automation of chips for like Samsung. That sort of made sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were using a static analysis tool called Coverity, which was kind of their first major piece. And if we roll down and look at some of the tech here, you can see Coverity is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they acquired Coverity, then Black Duck, then Codenomicon, which is there. Defensix is a product. And then this consulting services. And then, as you can imagine, when you acquire that many startups, all of the VPs and CEOs who are at the top are like, well, why is that CEO on the top? Why come I'm not on the top? And there was a little bit of politics that went on internally about, well, would this all be better if what would happen if Black Duck were acquired first? How would that have influenced the overarching purpose of the software integrity group and how it presented itself? And so there were a lot of questions that went on. Thankfully, for some reasons I don't understand, even though I know people who still work there, Synopsys decided to sell the software integrity group off. And it became its own independent entity now. And they've gone back to being called Black Duck, which I think is great because it was definitely the coolest brand.
For sure.
It had the little black ducks. I think I still have one somewhere. And people would come to the stand just to get the little black duck, squeezy rubber ducky. And there was literally a moment internally where I was still there where they mandated to get rid of the black duck because its branding was overshadowing Synopsys. So it's like, I think anybody from Black Duck who's still there, and there's quite a few, are probably elated with this because it kind of makes Synopsys cool again.
Oh, does it?
Everywhere. I don't know. Were they ever cool?
Yeah, Jason Schmidt, who I think was originally there Jason Schmidt joined Synopsys, general manager of software integrity group, will continue to lead Black Duck as the CEO. So it's not even the original Black Duck owner. They've moved on.
Oh no, yeah, he left right away. Yeah. He took the money and ran.
Yeah, so you say this is a competitor to Sneak, I'm assuming? It's in like that software compositional analysis. Now it's coming under one holistic brand.
I mean, it's the OG of software composition analysis. Like Black Duck goes way back, like to the 2000s, the actual 2000s.
And they just lost steam, I think, in the SCA. I just don't really hear them as much in competitive situations versus Sneak.
Well, yeah, this is what happens when you destroy the brand and absorb it into a giant monster of application security.
No kidding.
We'll see what happens, though. Watch this space.
For sure. All right. On to the security case for small language models.
Yeah, I like this. Do you want to? You had an opinion before I added this article, but you had an opinion, so you go.
Yes. So these are small LLMs. Small LLMs in this article is defined as something with 10 billion parameters or less. Traditional ones / some of the other ones now are getting into the hundreds and thousands of billion parameters. So, who needs a 50 billion parameter in a LLM when 3 billion will do just fine? And yeah, my opinion is, you don't need to generate everything. If we're talking Kubernetes and we just want an AI that generates network policies and operator frameworks and things like that, you can build that. You can take some open source models, train it, build it into your product. You don't need to necessarily use injection either. You don't need to rely on a customer to ask something. You could, for example, look at their network policies and say, do you want to implement this to become more, to help with your CIS benchmarks, for example, right? You could plug that into your application. Don't necessarily have to worry about injection or prompt injection from the user side or them screwing up. They can just say, no, I don't like that. And they can move on, right? To me, that's the simplest business use case.
I think it's interesting, right? there's I also think it was funny that you called it a small LLM, which makes it a small large language model, or it's like, but it's confusing, right? Uh, but and 10 billion parameters is still a lot. You have to, I think when you're talking about SLMs, they have to be purpose built. And as you just alluded to, LLMs are designed to talk to us. Like the hilarious example they have here is you don't need a model to write a poem about cats and dogs eating spaghetti under a bridge, which it can do. It's when it's been trained on every possible variation of language, thus it can create new what it can generate, and it's generative. You don't need that, but you still need the ability for it to interact. So
Mhm.
constrain its capability to interact so that you cannot prompt. It's just presenting you with yes or no answers or very simple responses that you don't have any user controlled input really. Then yeah, that can be far more secure than relying entirely on let's say an LLM that talks to a domain specific vector database known as a RAG, so that it can have specific knowledge and intelligence, but also write a poem about cats and dogs getting under a bridge.
Mhm.
So
From an organizational standpoint, it fits in a lot easier too. Instead of having with this huge LLM that all of your different applications plug into via an API, and there's a whole security aspect to that, you can say, hey, here are some of the default SLMs that we're using. Some of they vary. Go and take
mhm,
your team. We're going to give you an LLM expert for whatever project you want to work on. You build that specific use case, hook it into your small feature that you need, and then deploy it with that small microservice, for example, right? So it's like that individual LLM for that microservice. You don't necessarily have to have this huge network hooking into one massive LLM. So I
well,
think
yeah,
it's
I
easier
think
to
that's the
deploy and
gateway.
secure.
Yeah, I think it's definitely easier to deploy, and performance and cost will go down. But I think then, and we're going to get to this later in the show on another subject. That's when you're getting to LM agents. Agents are just LLMs that are talking in very specific and minimal mechanisms to perhaps other LLMs that are going off to do specific tasks. Those can be SLMs, which is cool, but we'll come to that because that's a whole that's the next level, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. One of the more interesting things that I stumbled across was NIST dropping their password complexity and mandatory reset rules. And they also changed some specific wording. They now say shall not and shall force a change. So they used to recommend, but now it says verifiers and CSPs shall not impose other composition rules for passwords and shall not require users to change passwords periodically.
Ooh.
However, verifiers shall force a change if there's evidence of compromise. So basically, what they're saying is they want a 15 character long password. They don't need to have anything specific, just needs to be 15 characters long. That's what they
Mhm.
recommend. It has to be more than 8. And then they only force a change when there is a breach or a hack. And this is largely due because whenever there's something long, people actually choose, or long or complex, they'll choose a shorter password in order to remember it, or
Mhm.
something that's more likely, related to them, which leads them to social engineering. Instead, it's like, no, come up with a 15 word password, 15 character password, remember it, keep remembering that one. And as long as we don't get hacked, you shouldn't have to change it, which
Agree
crazy. I think this is like 7
wholeheartedly.
years too late.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it doesn't mention past phrases in here, which I still like. If you got 15
Yep.
characters, I mean, it's second about maximum 64, I think, in here.
Yep.
But I mean, that's great because I tend to use phrases, and it drives me nuts when it's like, well, you don't have the exclamation point
Yeah.
and
So,
the number on the end, which everyone does the password one exclamation point, right?
mhm.
So
Yeah,
I
just
think it's great.
jumble 4 or 5 words together. That's all you need.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think it's a huge, very late step forward.
Yeah, but the shall aspect was interesting because now instead of a recommendation, they're basically it's a force. Like if you don't do this, I have a feeling there's going to become some liability with security rules in the future.
And insurance
Yeah,
companies are going to
that's
look and
true.
see and
Yep.
can grab this and go, well, you didn't do
Yeah.
this the way it was recommended.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yep.
All right, on to a funny article that we stumbled across.
I know it's almost WTF, but not quite.
Hmm. Yeah,
Uh,
AI coding assistants do not boost productivity or prevent burnout. This study found. It goes into the introduction of GitHub Copilot, talks about how it showed a lot of promise early on. People were using it correctly. And then now they're blaming humans for becoming lazy. That, code used from GitHub's Copilot had 40%, 41% more bugs in their code and
yeah.
saw no evidence that the AI assistant was helping prevent developer burnout. as somebody who is doing their master's right now and going through code stuff, don't use it to generate anything. It's actually useless. But honestly, the IDEs and like if you understand what you're doing, the IDEs are at that point now where they can correct and refactor a lot of things. They're going to give you the same suggestions. What it is really good for is if you want to figure out like, why do I use, public main void in Java for this specific code? It'll say, because, of these calls, this is why you use this. Like, I find that breakdown extremely useful for learning. But if you don't know what you're doing, I just don't think it helps you at all.
It's bad. Yeah, I use it for Python, and I actually used it recently to create a GitHub action workflow, and it was so bad. Like everything was out of date. It got versions wrong. Like it was a nightmare. It took longer essentially. But in Python, I tend to write like an old C programmer because that's what I am. And I write linear. And if I say, but make the structure of this more object oriented, and it will take what I've done and it will go boop, 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 and it'll put things into classes. And I'm like, oh, and it looks, I'm reasonably good enough to say this is better. And it did save me time. So there, time and a place and a purpose. But yeah, I totally believe the fact that it's not actually helping anybody. It's fun. There's I think it's number 9 or something, 9 or 8 or 9 on the OS top 10 LLM, well, not concerns, but risks associated with LLMs. I think 9 is over reliance.
Yeah.
And I think that we're going to see that going up.
I think it's just there's got to be a graph for technology adoption, and it has to do with reliance. As long as you don't rely completely on your technology and you can do things manually, you're okay. But that's a greater topic for a different time.
Oh, yeah.
All right, on to the last of the somewhat normal news. Bleeding into WTF, we have a pretty crazy hack.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a little long. This is why we put the links down below. You got to go to get all the details. You're going to have to go in here and find it. And there's a good video, so you can kind of skip everything if you just like to sit there and ingest stuff over lunch, which is coming up soon if you're in the Eastern time zone like us. But it's better explained down here with a diagram. The background before we get to the diagram here is the idea that if you've got a smart car, essentially, I don't mean smart car in the branding. I mean like that it phones home and can be part of technology that you can have remote starts and all this kind of stuff. The Kias do talk to a central place, and they worked out that okay, even if you're not signed up to it, the car still is on the network. And they worked out that they obviously tried early on to communicate to it by using the license plate and getting information, but they found out there was an undefended API to register themselves as a dealer for Kia. And they just went, I'm a dealer. And I went, okay. And they're like, really? So that's how it starts, where you see the attacker generating a dealer token. So now that it says I can have a registered token, and that's my authentication to pretend to talk to the network, then suddenly they were off and running, right? And you could see the exchanges, dealer token, return dealer token, fetch the victim's phone and email via their VIN, when they can get the VIN via the plate, like, through other methods. And then suddenly they're returning the victim. Then they demote the owner. And now they've got the victim vehicle, add the attacker as the primary owner, execute commands via the VIN. And that's it. You have the car. And it's like,
not sure if you want it, but you have it.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, they did tell Kia about this, and apparently no cars were impacted.
Yeah, so nobody did it.
Yeah, if you own a Kia, you're safe.
It was a pretty elaborate attack. I find it very fascinating, but it is one of those things. And what's more interesting, I think, from my own curiosity about hacking, is that someone's going to see this, and Kia is now safe because they know about it, but the whole method is interesting. So that's you can imagine there's a ton of
possibly reusable. I don't think Kia is the only company that has set that up or has
exactly right. Exactly right. So, all right, similar. Are we in the WTFs yet?
Yeah, crazier stuff coming.
All right, this is equally complicated. It starts off saying cat videos. So I would say most people who watch the show have created a presentation using Google Slides. And there is an option within Google Slides to add a video. And so this guy added, his cat video. And the first thing he did was not add the cat video. He went, he goes, what happens if I add the cat video? Great, it works. What happens if I mess with the URL for the cat video? So, look. Well, we'll do a plug at the end of this. And he did a path traversal just because I saw the Cloud Native Club was logged in. That is Steve Wade from he has a Cloud Native Club. We should talk about that on the show sometime. Yep. He did a path traversal, so he did YouTube / ... just to see if he could go up. Can I get the entire YouTube directory to display? And it tried to do it. So he's like, oh, okay, so it doesn't mind me manipulating the URL for the YouTube. So he just started going further and further down the ability to manipulate YouTube. And it's like, well, what domains can I use that are still within the Google realm and still acceptable, but aren't actually a video? And that's where you have to start looking at the way he's doing Google redirects to move to other domains. And he's like, okay, now we got it to display. Are you sure you want to leave YouTube? And he's like, oh, that's embedded in the slide.
Oh, wow.
And so then he took that to the next level. He's like, invalid URL. And he got further and further down where he was able to embed another slide deck inside his own slide deck. And he's like, aha, I can totally mess with this URL on a huge scale. And eventually he got to the point where he looked at what happens when you try and share within, you can share your slide deck.
Yep.
Yeah. So we started going, well, what happens? What's the communication? What are the parameters that exist within this share mechanism? And what does that path look like? And can you pre-populate it with people? He's like, okay. So we found you can do this all on one URL. You don't have to, all that click through, you can bypass all of it. And he eventually got to the point where he was embedding a request to share the drive of the viewer back with the creator of the original slide deck.
Wow.
So eventually you need access. He got to the point where he got it up here, pre-populated, editor access, and this is the embedding. Now, this is no good. If you get this, if I create a slide deck, I send it to you to share your whole G drive with me of whatever user you are. You're not clicking this, right?
No.
Somebody unless it's a slide deck and you put an overlay on it.
Oh, that's good.
And there's the send. So that's what he did. It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a ponies guy.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess
ponies, and then boom, you just gave him permission to look at your entire G drive. So that's why it's a ClickJack. Pretty awesome, I think.
Yeah, that is very, very cool. Scary.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Take it away.
Yeah, speaking of Google also brings ads to the AI overviews. We were just reading an article about how OpenAI was bleeding $5 billion over the last year. Google obviously does not want ChatGPT, Perplexity to eat into that advertising revenue. If you've used Google recently, you'll see a little blurb sometimes, depending on what you ask about the AI response. Just know that ads are coming to that. So just when you thought you couldn't scroll down, you had to scroll forever past those sponsored section. Now, and then the AI was on top. You're like, okay, I got my answer. Nope. There's going to be another sponsored ad above that. So,
yep. Awesome.
Ads everywhere.
Yeah. There we go. It was a matter of time, really, right? I mean, so much money is going into AI. And it's like, oh boy. But I mean, I'm already at a point where I use Chat or Gemini or whatever, because I don't like getting ads off Google, and it does the same search and I don't have to deal with any of the crap. So yes, they have been eating their own lunch a little bit.
Yes. And then on to our favorite topic. We talk about it pretty much once every 4 months?
At least.
Largest DDoS attack in internet history.
Again.
Again. Yeah, this is a particularly big one. 2 billion packets per second, 3 terabits per second. Also in the US too. It was across multiple different countries, Russia, Vietnam, Russia, Brazil, Spain, and the US. I'm just wondering who has the money for something like this. That's a lot of compute.
Yeah. I know. And every single time we see these articles, it was thwarted. So what did somebody just go, oh, okay, well, only 2.14 billion packets. Let's ramp up for next year when we'll do 3.14, and maybe that'll do it. No, I don't know. Somebody's blowing a lot of compute power for a gigantic waste of time.
Yeah, Cloudflare. But do you think Cloudflare pays these people for marketing? It's like a whole like, oh, we thwarted. Oh,
Cloudflare stock just went up. Woo.
That's a good conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
I'll take my tinfoil hat off later.
All right. The spooky as hell.
This one's crazy. For those who've seen, Zuckerberg's out with this new feature product. Meta smart glasses are available now. He gave a whole demo on it, and he gave them to a few college kids, and they dox people real time. So it could the Google glasses, or sorry, the Meta glasses can take photos of people as they're walking by, and then when you pull up their phone, it can search for all their information. So just how you would do a reverse image search on Google and then use that to look up Facebook and LinkedIn information, it does that in real time. And if you watch some of these videos that are linked, they pull up enough information about people, and then they go and introduce themselves as a former acquaintance. Like, oh, I met you at so-and-so institute about a year ago. Like, how are you doing? And the person starts talking to them as if they went there. So, now just be extra wary of people with thick brim glasses. Thin brim glasses are going to be the new in thing, right? Because nobody wants to be accused of taking photos of people. Yeah. It's a mixture of very cool technology, and I am very scared.
I mean, the flip side of this is I suck so hard at names. I would love it if someone comes up to me and I'm wearing my big stupid glasses that make me even less attractive than I already am. That's what I need. But then at least it comes up and says, "This is Michael Foster. You have a show with him every 2 weeks." I'm like, "Oh, right, Michael. Yeah, hi."
Every single person that you meet is going to have that dazed look for a second. Oh yeah, hey Mike. Just looking off to the name.
You're like, I'm waiting for your glasses to tell me who I am. Yes, I know.
Too good. All right. On to the last one. Big finish. A little bit of a discussion here at the end. Even the godmother of AI has no idea what AGI is. Neither do we. Neither do we. So this is Fei Li. She been in AI since like 2006. Was one of the first pioneers of the vector databases that LLMs use. And they asked her, come from an academic AI background, and I don't even know what AGI is. They say that people will know when you see it, but they don't know. However, we went to OpenAI's charter, and they have a pretty good description of the 4 levels of AI. I believe it's in this article. They talk about LLMs and chatbots, and they talk about replacing a single worker, and they talk about innovation. So, an LLM or an AI bot that can actually invent things. And then the 4th level is replacing an entire organization. And so they say that, artificial intelligence, AGI, is at that level where it can replace entire organizations and do entire work for a large group. That was their definition. So that definition kind of scared me, because they're like, oh, we're at level 2 already. So if you look at the amount of progress they've made in such a short time,
I had a conversation recently with an AI researcher, and he was saying that, Sam Altman has been saying that it's going faster than you think already. But he was saying, 2 years ago when it first came out, it was like, a pretty well-educated high school student, and that's where it was. He goes, and in 2 years, we've given it 8 years of university, and now it's a very bright, undergrad that has just graduated, and it can communicate at that level. And he said, but it's educating itself, and the developments and the models are becoming smarter at a rate that leaves humans in the dust. So it's not necessarily not true. Like we were talking about earlier when I said SLMs, and was it level 3 was agents? Yeah, there it is. That's coming next. Yeah, and that's a good use for SLMs that are encapsulated inside and hidden behind a normal, maybe an LLM, right? I mean, the example where you're talking about getting rid of an entire organization, travel agent, perfect, right? You just prompt and say, here's where I want to go. Here's the price ring. You give it a very, very elaborate description of where you want to go and how and for the price. And it can communicate to you like an LLM, so you feel like at home. And then it can tell agents that are highly intelligent at booking flights, but you're never going to get to prompt that thing.
Yep.
And then boom, you've got an entire holiday booked. Now there's a whole massive security ramification to all of this, what I'm saying, but because there's almost no LLM that is unpromptable, because there are indirect prompts as well. But nevertheless,
and that's
it's interesting.
That's what. So you see this general use case, and they tend to invent for the top level, right? But that doesn't mean that businesses are going to implement it in that way. So that's why I kind of have hope that this will be a little bit slower. Like the adoption will be not as fast, I think, as ChatGPT is saying it. That doesn't mean that they're innovating fast. It's just, who's going to spend all that money, and then what is the upside of it?
Yeah.
Because honestly, I would hate to be that first tech company that implements, AI and removes an entire organization from their company. That's just a PR nightmare.
You'd have to feel pretty damn confident.
Yeah.
I mean, I think more than likely there'll be organizations that are quietly using a full AI stack to do something pretty major, and they're not just telling you that. They probably have a lot of human observations on it, right?
Yeah.
It's being guided.
Yeah,
well, like even the first step.
Even the SLMs that we were talking about, let's say, every single app has a small SLM that's associated with the app to do a specific job. That's another application that's in the pipeline. It's another application that has to be secured, that has to be updated, it has to be patched, right? It's not like your SREs are going away. You can't trust an AI interface to then become an SRE to track itself, right? There has to be some sort of check. So
yeah. Oh, that's a great good point. The AI SRE, that's going to be a big job in the future for sure. I wonder how many people also, and actually I was just thinking something, and then Steve Wade put this up, it lies to you, they're going to be an awful experience going to Lyon versus Lisbon. There did you hear was it you who told me there's a desk in, I think it's in Vienna, Austria, to explain to people that they're not in Australia at the airport, apparently. And you're like, okay, yeah, I could see a lot of people ending up in Austria instead of Australia through AI. That would be a guaranteed blunder.
But there's probably I think there's a Sydney, Nova Scotia in Canada or something like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for error. There's London, Ontario. Oh my God.
Yeah, the real London.
Yeah, come on. London with an apology.
No international airport. I think you're safe.
Yep. Okay. I think that's the end of another amazing show.
Yeah, it's been 10 articles. We'll be back hopefully in a few weeks, but remember to hit that little subscribe button and the bell so you know when we're going live.
All right. Once again, he is Mike. I am Steve, and thanks for watching Wired In.